So the other day I pulled into my driveway, turned off the engine, and realized with absolute certainty that I had zero memory of the last 20 minutes of my life. None. Did I stop at the red lights? Did that car behind me, did I cut them off and that's how they got there? Who knows? My car basically drove itself while my brain was occupied with deep existential debate over whether dogs think in English or in barking.
I'm not the only one. That's good.
Pretty sure because my dog was a street dog from Mexico, it has a deep Vato accent, which is what started this conversation in my head. And it got me thinking, we do this all the time, don't we? I have a few thoughts about that. Have you ever inhaled an entire plate of tacos while doom scrolling on your phone, only to look down and wonder, who stole all my tacos? Spoiler alert, it was you. You ate them. You just didn't taste them at all. And have you ever watched a whole weekend vanish into thin air, leaving you wondering if you lived it or if it was just a fever dream? Or my personal favorite, if you've ever felt completely, utterly exhausted, even though your life looks pretty good on paper, and you technically have nothing to complain about. Because those have all certainly shown up in my life repeatedly. If you notice that and think something is out of line, and you ask WebMD, it'll tell you that you have cancer. Now, I swear, if you go to WebMD with a stubbed toe, it'll still tell you that you have cancer. That is the only diagnosis that WebMD gives you. Do not go to WebMD. But if you go to Google or your local AI and you tell it those symptoms, it'll tell you that you're, and in a way you are, but stress is just an umbrella catch-all term. We can get a little bit more specific about it. And I think that we are profoundly disconnected. And most people think they're disconnected or that they have lost access to something out there. But that's not what they've lost access to. What they've lost is they're disconnected from themselves. That we're walking around in a high-performance organic vehicle controlled by software that we aren't sure how it works and with no instruction manual. And if you're wondering if you're disconnected, check out for these classic symptoms. Your mind has 47 tabs open, 3 of them are frozen, and there's music playing somewhere, but you can't find it. You feel kind of numb even when things are going well. Someone asks you how you feel, and you're like, purple? Because identifying emotions is hard. Pass. Identifying emotions and words are hard, okay? You're living on pure, unadulterated, uncut autopilot. You have the attention span of a goldfish on espresso, and you're lonely in a crowded room. Your inner dialogue sounds like a Yelp review written by an angry Karen, and frankly, nothing feels particularly meaningful. You're just going through the motions. Did any of that sound familiar?
Did either of you watch American Dad?
No.
I have.
There's a goldfish with a German accent.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Your goldfish on espresso made me think of that character, and it's spot on. Anyway,
So if any of that
speaking of attention span,
somebody get Josh another espresso.
Seriously,
But in his defense, he is probably a little sleep deprived.
it's all right. It's
Little-
gonna
little-
get
little
get
punchy.
real weird tonight.
Little punchy. So if any of that sounds familiar, the tricky thing about disconnection is that it's tough to notice. You might think, well, this is just how adulting is. But life can be much better. If you look around, you might see a person or two who's having a better time at life. And I'm not pointing them out to make you jealous, but just to say it's possible for you to live a life that is vibrant. So what if you're just offline? It's like a breaker switch that's been a fuse that's popped. The signal that's coming in is still good, and everything on the other side of the fuse is still in working order. We just need to flip the circuit back or change the fuse and restore access so that the lost signal with yourself is returned. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. Being calm allows us to turn our attention inward and reestablish connection. So put down the phone, unless you're using it to listen to me, in which case keep it exactly where it is, and let's get reconnected.
Smash that subscribe button.
Smash that subscribe button, hit the like. Thank you for cueing me on that. I definitely need to put that in there. So what is connection really? So we're operating like a smartphone with no Wi-Fi. But what does it mean to get back online? What is connection really? Connection is a contact point that allows energy, information, and awareness to flow. It is a contact point. It's not nearness, it's not proximity, it's things that are touching. They have to make contact. That is the connection, that there is a physical touching. The dating world is a good example of this. You ask a friend how their date went, and they say, meh, there was no connection. No energy was moving. Conversation felt like pulling teeth. That no real contact is happening. Well, guess what? The exact same thing happens inside our own bodies. Your mind can be furiously busy all day long. Your body can be screaming at you with a tight shoulder or a nervous stomach. Your emotions can be throwing a temper tantrum in the background. And they are all technically in the same room. They share the same skin, after all. But they aren't in true contact with each other. That nothing is flowing between them. It's just a table for four where usually only the mind is talking. The brilliant Brené Brown defines connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. And that's pretty good. What is true between people is also true within people. Can you say that your mind truly sees, hears, and values your body? Or do you treat your body like an Uber driver to cart your big brain around from meeting to meeting? The ironic tragedy of the human condition is that most of us spend our entire lives desperately trying to connect with others while completely, utterly disconnected from within ourselves. We're trying to hotspot into everybody else's Wi-Fi while our own router is unplugged. So, how do we fix that? What are we exactly trying to reconnect to? So we'll go over the roadmap for today's conversation because the path back to yourself is surprisingly simple. First comes contact. You begin to make connections within yourself so that you can see what's happening within inside you. Then comes communication. Because we've made contact inside of you, your body, your mind, your emotions, and your deeper self start sharing information again. Communication creates alignment. The different parts of you stop pulling in opposite directions. And alignment creates trust. You begin trusting your own energy and signals again. So again, the map is contact, communication, alignment, and trust. That's the journey back to connection and access.
Can we put some meat on that? Because like as you were talking, I was thinking of times in my life where I've experienced that, and I realized I'm struggling to articulate what the lack of connection feels like, other than just I'm doing things and I feel like it should feel better, but it doesn't.
Yeah, it's a numbness.
Yeah, it's...
Which the hardest thing about being numb is noticing that you're numb.
Yeah, without the feeling, it's kind of hard to notice the
Correct.
the lack of feeling.
If you ever gone to the dentist and had one side of your mouth numbed up, you know, the biggest problem is that you're going to chew on the side of your mouth while it's numb and not notice.
That's such a weird experience.
Yeah, well, the same thing is happening in your life. That part of you is numb, so like that part of your life is getting chewed up without you noticing. It's taking damage and it just hasn't kicked in yet that you're out of alignment with yourself. So what is it we're trying to reconnect to? We touched on it briefly about the different parts that make up who you are. You've got your body, your thoughts, your emotions, and then the deeper sense of self. You can call it your spirit, your soul, your intuition, your inner vibe. Whatever language doesn't make you cringe, I call it the infinite and eternal energy that animates you. But here's the problem. Most of us spend our entire lives living from just one of those parts. And it's usually the mind. We let the mind become the absolute CEO of our lives. It makes all the decisions, it runs all the meetings, it invents wild, elaborate stories at 3 a.m. about that email from your boss. It gets to explain everything. And eventually the mind starts acting like it's the only employee in the entire company. Meanwhile, the body is filing workers' comp complaints because your neck is frozen. The emotions are frantically sending emails to HR saying, hey, we're drowning over here. And your soul stopped showing up for the company meeting 3 years ago. And through it all, The mind is just sitting there in its corner office, sipping coffee, saying, everything's fine. Look at my spreadsheets. If I need to hear from any of you, I'll let you know. I need to get back to work. I don't care what the rest of you do. Gentle listener, that is not connection. That is a hostile corporate takeover. Connection is when all of those parts are communicating. And I'm not talking about perfect Zen-like harmony where you sit on a mountain and glow, just honest, open dialogue. It looks like this. Your body says, hey, I'm absolutely running on fumes. And instead of chugging a third espresso to override it, you put your head down and take a 20-minute power nap. Your emotions say, hey, this weird little detail in this conversation feels really important. And instead of dismissing it as you being dramatic, you stop and get curious. Your intuition whispers, something is off with this deal, or this person is bad news. And instead of rationalizing it away with your giant logical brain, you pay attention. The goal here isn't perfection. The goal is to just get the information flowing freely through access. And something really beautiful happens when that contact returns. Life starts making sense. It's not that you've magically solved all your problems or won the lottery. It's just that you're getting accurate data. The body gets a vote, and so does the emotions, and the deeper self and your mind. All of them get to have a vote. And suddenly making decisions becomes infinitely easier because the entire team is in the same room. Got something about that?
Isn't it like 80 or 90% of the information that comes from you actually comes from your body, like not from your brain?
Well, the brain is interpreting it, and I'd say it's actually quite a bit higher than that. It's like 99.9.
I think the percentage I saw was 99.7, but in the back of my head I was like,
That seems
remembering that
incredibly
correctly?
precise for a thing that's probably
Well,
very hard to measure.
So as a broad measurement, I think I go with the low end of the numbers on the subconscious. So if you measure all the information that all five senses are taking in, it's 11 million bits per second. And if you take what your conscious mind can analyze and reason, it is 135 bits per second, maybe 138 bits, 135, 140 bits per second that it is processing. So it is like almost, not quite, 100,000 to 1.
Yeah.
You know that Alan Watts thing that's like consciousness is a forgetting thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's that. Most of what consciousness is just like strategic ignoring and forgetting.
Yeah, it's a strategic filtering of, this isn't going to affect me. I don't have to pay attention.
Also, story of my life.
Yes.
Yeah. People don't like it so much, but yeah.
Yeah. That's
Here
why I
we are.
often make fun of people's conscious mind and go, you are consciously debating this decision and weighing it tremendously about how you're going to spend $1. Meanwhile, 100,000 is being spent without you even noticing. And you think your $1 budget makes a difference. Which gets us to decision making. Have you ever had a decision that felt incredibly complicated and very important, that you debated it for months? You made a pros and cons list. You poll 5 of your closest friends. You listen to 3 podcasts on the topic. You overthink it from every single Euclidean and non-Euclidean angle. And then one day you get quiet. Maybe you're in the shower or driving. You're not remembering to drive that time either. And you realize, oh, I know the answer. And I knew the answer 3 months ago. You didn't need another podcast or an opinion or another pros and cons list. You just needed better access. So what created that sudden moment of clarity? The answer didn't just appear. It was there the whole time. Your access to it is what was missing. The signal was always broadcasting. You just stopped listening. There's a beautiful concept that says the life you create inside is real elegance. And I love that, because from the outside, a life can look insanely successful, flashy and perfect on Instagram while feeling full of anxiety and unsettled on the inside. But when the inside is connected, when your thoughts, your bodies, your emotions, and your deeper self are all actively collaborating, you start to feel coherent. You feel like one person again, that you are a unified self.
But I thought on the decision-making thing, I will sometimes defer to that if I have a gut feeling or something feels like it comes immediately, and I would otherwise default to, I want to do some math or some analytics on this or something. I just interpret that as one of those voting mechanisms just spent a lot of its internal capital to get me to do a thing. And I may not have a full explanation or understanding of it, but I got the signal. And when I've learned to trust the signals and they get reinforced with, oh yeah, that was a toxic person I should have not been doing business with. Thanks for that gut read. It made me think of all the competing kind of opinions you might actually have within you.
Yeah, we all have cognitive dissonance on many topics and things in our life where we think one thing and behave a different way. I constantly use the example of, I want to be rich, but I think rich people are evil. I want to lose weight, but I like eating tacos. I would like to be deeply connected and in love with this person in my life, but I'm not going to be vulnerable. We all have those competing things. We'll talk about that in a minute too.
Let's do it.
You have a thought over there too?
No, not for a long time.
Okay. Sit rep normal. Now, at this point, you may be listening to this and thinking, okay, Jake, dynamic internal collaboration sounds lovely, as we would say in the corporate world. But honestly, I'm just trying to figure out how to not be stressed out by Tuesday morning. Do I really need a soul meeting for that? Fair point. Connection itself is not the ultimate goal, just like calm is not the ultimate resting place. Connection is simply the condition that makes every single thing that you're already looking for possible. So we already talked about decision making a little bit, but we've all had that moment where we finally made a tough choice and instantly a massive wave of relief washes over us. It's not because you somehow made the magically perfect choice. You have no idea if your plan is going to work out yet, but you still feel lighter. Why? Because you're no longer disagreeing with yourself. A lot of what we call decision making isn't decision making at all. It's a messy, exhausting internal negotiation. One part of you wants safety, another part wants freedom, one part wants certainty, and another is screaming for growth. So you oscillate, you swing back and forth, yo-yoing. It's not because you're incapable of making a choice. It's because three parts of you aren't being seen, heard, or valued at the executive meeting. Connection doesn't magically make the right choice pop out of a toaster, but it gives every part of you a seat at the table. And when all the data is available, decisions become surprisingly more simpler. Not always easy, but more simpler.
I love more simpler. Also, they feel better. It feels different to make a decision out of tapping into your body and the feeling of alignment, opposed to just, I genuinely have thought about this from every angle and cannot think about it anymore, or the men in white coats are going to come for me and I just have to make a decision. A decision out of alignment is crazy different than a decision out of exhaustion.
You know, the problem with most decisions that if we try and be in harmony and congruence with ourselves is it puts us deeply out of step with the rest of the world or with the expectations that other people have us, and there's still a price to pay for that.
Very much so.
You know, most of the things that I want to do in life, I have learned to not ask other people their opinion because I have good taste and they don't. And it's like, why would I pay you for your opinion on this topic? No? Then I should not ask you.
Yeah.
And generally, if there's somebody in your life who's giving you their opinion, would you pay them for that opinion on that topic? No? Yeah, well, you don't get a vote.
Yeah, and I think that goes directly back to how you started this conversation, and one of those necessary attributes is developing that sense of trust with yourself, because then that external need for validation becomes just unneeded. It just
I can say one of the everybody I've known in my life who is enormously wealthy, none of them needed external validation for their decisions. That is the one unifying thing that all of them had, was they had a deep belief in themselves that didn't require anybody else's input.
Yeah, I think that also is a difference, a notable difference between making decisions out of alignment and exhaustion. When you're exhausted, when you're running yourself in circles, you need reinforcement from someplace because it's not coming from you. But when you're in alignment, it's just, this is what I feel, so this is what I'm going to do. In my experience, anyway. It's all pretty new to me, but it's awesome. 10 out of 10 recommend.
So now let's talk about anxiety and stress. We love to blame our stress entirely on what's happening around us, our jobs, our finances, the news, traffic, and that stuff matters. But a shocking amount of our daily anxiety comes from what's happening inside of us. It's the internal conflict, the resistance, the endless inner argument. It's the existential equivalent of driving with the parking brake on. You're trying to force yourself forward while simultaneously holding yourself back, and it's absolutely exhausting. Connection doesn't wave a magic wand and make your stress problems disappear. It just creates alignment. That if you think about going to the grocery store and grabbing a cart, only to realize that one of the front wheels is totally warped. If you're completely frazzled or not calm, you'll curse and just aggressively power through and spend the next 40 minutes using all your upper body strength to stop the cart from crashing into the cereal display. But if you are connected and calm, you stop, notice that the wheel is busted, and just go grab a different cart. Boom. Energy and annoyance saved. Think about how much energy you waste every single day to try and manually steer your own warped grocery cart, to ignore what you're feeling, to suppress your emotions, to pretend you're totally fine when you're melting down, to say yes when your entire soul is screaming no, to push through absolute exhaustion and convince yourself everything is great. How you doing? I'm just happy to be here. That is a lot of work. Most people are far more tired from the endless war they are fighting against themselves than they are from living their lives. When you find connection, alignment steps in, and the energy that you are wasting trying to micromanage your internal conflict is handed back to you. And that's when you start developing self-trust. Self-trust is one of those fluffy self-help phrases that gets thrown around a lot, but isn't about bravado. It's not about positive thinking, and it's definitely not about standing in front of your bathroom mirror saying affirmations to yourself. You're good enough, you're smart enough. By golly, people like you, Riley.
It just makes me think of Cool Runnings when Junior stands in the mirror and goes, I see pride, I see power, I see a badass mother who don't take no crap from nobody. Oh, so good. If I were to do affirmations, that's what they would be.
That's what it would be. So self-trust develops when you listen to yourself and discover that your own internal signals are worth listening to. You notice tension in your shoulders and you pay attention to it. You sense something that was off in a meeting and you investigate. You feel a sudden spark of excitement about a random project and you follow it. Over time, you start collecting evidence that there is wisdom inside you, that your inner world isn't just random static. And here's the kicker: all trust is ultimately self-trust. As that relationship with yourself deepens, your relationship with everyone else starts changing as well. The deepest relationship that you'll ever have is the one that you have with yourself. Every other relationship is built on top of that foundation. It's not possible to have a deep, authentic relationship with someone else when you are totally disconnected from yourself. If I can't be honest with myself, how can I be honest with you? If I can't hear my own voice, I'm definitely not listening to yours. The depth of our connection with others is always capped by the depth of connection within ourselves. And life just gets quieter, that the noise decreases. The endless mental chatter, the frantic second guessing, the constant internal debate, it all begins to soften. I see this all the time when I facilitate breath work. People finish a session, open their eyes, and usually one of the very first things that they say, almost in a whisper, is, "It's so quiet in my head." That right there is what connection feels like. It's not necessarily some high vibe state of manic excitement or cosmic bliss. It is simply the beautiful, sweet absence of all the unnecessary internal noise. Once you experience that kind of quiet, it's a really hard thing to forget. People look for clarity first, but it doesn't come first. Clarity doesn't create connection. Connection creates clarity. And before connection can happen, you have to be calm. So why does calm come first? The signal can't be heard through the noise. You might be thinking, if connection is already there, why can't I feel it? Or if connection is already possible, why isn't it showing up naturally? Because most people are moving too fast. Trying to connect with yourself while you're stressed, overwhelmed, or stuck in fight or flight is like trying to tune into a radio during a thunderstorm. The signal is there, you just can't hear it. And that's why calm comes first. And again, calm doesn't mean that you're not having any thoughts or no emotions, that no problems are showing up in your life. Calm simply means your nervous system has settled enough to notice what's already there. That's where breathwork helps. It creates the condition that the breath slows the storm, the noise begins to quiet, and when the noise quiets down, contact becomes possible. So how does breathwork create connection? Conscious connected breathwork helps remove what's blocking access. It doesn't create access. Breathwork restores connection. It flips the breaker so that energy can flow, and that's where it starts to work again. Breathwork can also amplify the signal that is there, that it does increase the energy that is within you. Your energy, your emotions, and your inner world become more noticeable. Maybe because you become more sensitive to it, or because it increases the signal, but either way, that signal becomes stronger within you. Most people live almost their entire life in their heads. They're thinking about yesterday or tomorrow, what they should do, what they should have said, what might happen next. And breathwork interrupts that cycle, DJ record scratch. It pulls attention out of the narrative mind and brings it back into your body. And that body awareness, everything else starts to come online. You begin noticing tension you didn't notice you were carrying, emotions that were sitting quietly beneath the surface, parts of yourself that have been trying to get your attention for quite some time. And when the body starts providing accurate information, the mind can relax. It no longer has to guess and fill in the blanks to solve problems with incomplete information, because the body, emotions, and deeper self are talking and communicating. Information flows, and with that information comes energy and awareness flowing, that those contact points for information flowing are returning. And that's why breathwork can feel profound. Not because you become someone new, because for the first time in a long time, you can hear yourself again. And breath is one of the primary ways we return to ourselves.
Do you have examples of what the early connection from being really disconnected might look like for people? So this metaphor is not going to be helpful for most people, but it'll hopefully anchor you and you can take it from there. When you've never done any coding whatsoever, but you abstractly know what coding is, and then someone's like, no. All right, we're going to install this thing, and then we're going to print 2 + 2 = 4 to the screen, and you're going to run it. And then once you run it, you're like, that's what that is. And then you can do other stuff, but you need that first breakthrough moment from you have no idea what this actually looks or feels like to something simple. What's the equivalent that's you're living your life fairly disconnected, and then you do breath work and something's going to happen? What is that something? What might that look like?
I'd say there are two experiences that happen quite frequently. The first experience is, I joke about, we hide it by putting the word energy right in our name. In that when they come and do breath work, it will feel like they're hooked up to current, and that there's electricity running through their body and just running up and down. And any place where they have blockages, it'll pull up there until it breaks through, and they'll just have this tremendous sense of current running through their body. And there's really no other way to explain that other than like, hey, my whole body was full of energy. And it's like, yeah, we hid that, putting it right in the name. So that is the first hallmark experience of it. And I would say the second, there are probably going to be three. The second one is that people are largely uncomfortable in their bodies. You can tell in their posture and how they're carrying themselves that they're just uncomfortable being in this organic vehicle, that it's not set up properly for them. And that when they're doing breath work, the people who feel uncomfortable in their bodies, one, they don't notice that they're uncomfortable all the time, because if they did, it would be incredibly overwhelming. That they become comfortable in their body during breath work. They have the physical sensation of comfort. And the breathwork experience they have is, as soon as they are comfortable in their body, they leave their body and start having the experience of sailing through the universe or having some sort of out-of-body experience, which I found odd at first, that like, hey, you're finally comfortable in the body and the first thing you're going to do is leave it. But everybody does. So
I mean, maybe
what do I know?
Maybe that's just the experience of your whole life you've been squeezing something, and then once you let it go, it's like you can finally relax, and that goes from constantly under tension to relaxed, and that's what feels like flying away out of your body. When in reality, it's just relaxing into your body completely.
It is relaxing into their body, but the visuals and experience they're having in their mind is usually of sailing through the universe or some other space. They've left the room. Elvis is no longer in the building.
Got it.
And then I'd say that probably the third experience would be they just have an incredibly emotional experience. I think it was my second breathwork class where I snot bubble ugly cried for 40 minutes. And then because I'm a man, didn't want people to know that I cried and had emotions, grabbed a bottle of water and dumped it over my head like they wouldn't be able to see my bloodshot red eyes. Had somehow done that. So they can have, because they're so disconnected from their emotions, that first emotional experience is probably not going to be a light dusting of emotion. It is going to be an overwhelming roller coaster ride of emotions, of highs and lows, so that they can feel the signal. It's going to take a really large amount of energy for you to feel this energy. So we're going to give it to you so that you can feel it.
So the breath work gives you like the heavy dose of the electrical juice, and then the integration is as you're going through life, whether it's paying attention to a feeling you got in a meeting or any number of other examples you gave earlier, that should give you kind of a similar feeling of that same connection or something comparable.
Yeah, that at first it takes a significant amount of energy or boost for the signal to be received, and that the more often that you do it, the more that it's like any pathway, the more that you use the pathway, the wider the path gets, the easier it is to do that, and that you become more sensitive to it over time, that in the beginning you're not going to be very sensitive, you're going to become more adept at it.
That's helpful. That makes sense.
I think that's part of the reason why I am so confident is because I spent my whole life pushing in a direction just because I felt like I was supposed to, or it was the right thing, or somebody else expected it of me, and this is not that, and this feels different and is different, and
does it feel like connection?
It feels like alignment.
Nice.
And
which is working great.
Call back.
Yeah, absolutely. And so
The unified self.
that part, that feeling of alignment, that feeling of I'm going to do this and I don't give a crap what anyone says is pretty cool. It's pretty nice.
You get that really positive feedback where you're like, this feels good. And then you do it and you're like, that was good.
Yeah.
I heard this great investor say one of my favorite lines of all time. He said, you need to trust your gut, not because your gut is a good decision maker, but so that it can become a good decision maker.
Yeah. Big time.
In test taking, they often tell you your first guess is usually right. And if you go against your first guess, you're probably moving away from the right answer to the wrong answer.
Yeah, and to me, that's just moving away from your intuition. That's moving exactly what you were talking about, moving against yourself or moving away from yourself.
So the life you're searching for isn't missing. You've just lost access to what will naturally create that life. Breathwork restores the access. And with that, we will do our closing poem. The Layers by Stanley Kunitz. I have walked through many lives, some of them my own. And I am not who I was, though some principles of being abides, from which I struggle not to stray. And when I look behind, as I am compelled to do before I can gather strength to proceed on my journey, I see the milestones dwindling into the distance, and the roadway littered with the wrecks of thoroughfares I'm glad I didn't follow. In my rages, when I suffer through an end of the world madness, I face the wind, and though I fill the sails with my own breath, it is a different current that carries me. A voice of the wind thunders, live in the layers, not on the litter. Though I lack the art to decipher it, no doubt the next chapter in my book of transformation is already written. I am not done with my changes. And that was The Layers by Stanley Knutz. We spend our days walking through a dozen different lives, rarely stopping to wonder if any of them are our own. We clutter our heads with 47 open tabs running on pure, unadulterated autopilot, frantically trying to hotspot onto everyone else's Wi-Fi while our own internal router is completely unplugged. We let the analytical mind execute a hostile corporate takeover, treating the body like nothing more than a meat suit to carry our big brains from meeting to meeting. But Stanley Knutz gives us the exact override code to flip that circuit breaker back. He writes about a moment when the internal noise clears and a voice thunders, live in the layers, not on the litter. In this case, what a litter is a stretcher that you're being carried upon. The litter is the surrender to be carried along on someone else's path. It's the endless mental second guessing, the frantic text messages, the uninvited thoughts knocking on your door at midnight, and the scripts you keep replaying in your head. The layers? The layers are your body, your emotions, and your deeper self getting a seat back at the table. When you lie down on the mat and connect one breath to the next, you're dropping out of being directed by others and into the depths within you. You're establishing a physical contact point so that accurate data can flow through your entire system again. You don't need to go out and buy another book or download another course to figure out your life. You don't need to look at your past mistakes or overthink your choices from every angle. You just need to quiet the noise long enough to hear the person who's been standing there all along. Because the next chapter of your transformation is already written in your body and your psyche. You just have to come home to it. So stop living on the litter. Come back down into the depth of your own layers. How you breathe is how you live. And when you change your breath, you change who you become. Take a big self-connected breath.